Welcome, foolish mortals, to Halloween Treats, presented by the Look Back Machine. For the entire month of October, we bring you 31 episodes on 31 flicks. So sit back and relax on your broomstick. We have blood-curdling boogeyman and sadistic serial killers. From castles to were-rabbits to spine-chilling spine-tinglers. Oh, but that's not all. It's only a bit. There's also Dahmer, Dracula, and Wallace and Gromit. So turn down the lights and turn up the sound. And ready your heart, for it's about to pound. Because there's Halloween film history abound. Happy Halloween from the Look Back Machine.
Did Teen Wolf 2 kill your acting career?
Well, that's probably. I mean, if you were to look back, it probably didn't help. But
It's such a fucked up business. It's
well,
like, you were probably fine in Teen Wolf 2. It's just not the greatest script.
There's so many things that made that shit. But,
Right.
probably be included.
Sequels to Halloween and horror films are inevitable. If a Halloween movie even made a dismal amount at the box office, you can bet it at least has one straight-to-DVD video release out there somewhere. For big successes, you may as well purchase your ticket to the sequel on Fandango at the end of the first weekend. For almost the entire film industry, one of the scariest ventures is the sequel to the popular film. The public sees sequels, but generally hates them. The critics see them as a cash grab, and the director hates it because he has to follow the formula of the first film. Which brings us to Teen Wolf 2. The first Teen Wolf had the benefit of Michael J. Fox. The second had Jason Bateman, which in today's world is not a bad replacement. However, the major problem was the usual villain of all movies, the studio. This is the story of Teen Wolf 2 through the eyes of director Chris Leach, as he tries to maintain his individuality and vision within the constraints of a sequel. Director Chris Leach.
Matthew Weissman and Jeff Loeb, I knew from the Hitchhiker series, which I did for HBO. So they were not strangers to me, and Teen Wolf 1, the original Teen Wolf, was a big hit for them. And when the sequel came about, they thought of me because we had already collaborated together on the Hitchhiker series for HBO. Initially, I was reluctant to do it on some levels, except for the fact that Jeff Loeb and Matt Weissman were pretty persuasive. And look, we were all sort of, young filmmakers at the time, and, it seemed like a good fit, you know what I mean? It seemed like at the time, sequel or no sequel, it just seemed like it was, going to be fun, and that we could have a good time with it, and who knows what, how it would do. Well, I think what the sequel offered was the fact that this was not a team sport. This was an individual effort because, the thing was boxing, and I had done a boxing movie before. So my first feature was a boxing movie called The Hitter. And I had a sense of like, okay, you can make sort of the heroic morality tale here of abandoning, what you think is your greatest strength and give it up to, your greatest weakness in a way, and that's being yourself and let the chips fall where they may. And so I said, okay, I've kind of done that before in a boxing movie, where all the odds are against this person and you have to reach down deep. And I thought, okay, I can do that. So that's what we tried to do. Well, I think the biggest challenge was that the studio, meaning Atlantic Films, I guess that's what their name was, Atlantic International, whatever the company was funding it. Their head of production was extremely hands-on on every level, and to the extent where they forced a lot of decision-making. And look, I want to be very clear about this. I mean, in the making of any kind of movie in any kind of studio situation, particularly a feature, no matter how much money is on the line, the fact is that they have a lot of say, and your job is to persevere with your vision and collaborate. But given the fact that it's a sequel, they have a lot more say because they feel as though they want you to deliver a formula, and to a certain extent. And so the pressure on the production came mostly from the studio. Well, one of the first examples was they insisted on the director of photography that they chose versus someone that I would have chosen. And under the DGA contract, that's my right to do that. And although he was great, he was a very nice guy, nice gentleman, but wasn't really kind of the style I was looking for. So that was a compromise. And from that point on, everything else was sort of an example of that. Also, the head of the studio is a gentleman by the name of Bill Tennant. Unfortunately, here's the thing. I mean, Bill had a studio to run, and he had other films in production. We were shooting in Claremont, California. And, when you're shooting film, I mean, unlike digital, you have to wait for the dailies. You have to, you're sort of a day behind before you see the stuff. And he would be seeing the dailies at his lunchtime while we're still shooting that day. So he sort of previewed stuff before I ever had a chance to see it, which I would see it on the second night. I'm not sure if you can follow my logic here. So let's say we're shooting on day one. I would see the dailies on the evening of my wrap of day two for day one. Unfortunately, he would be seeing the dailies at his lunchtime. So he already had a preview of what I had done the day before, and therefore he already had a preconceived idea of his notes, so to speak. And, notes are good and bad. And the fact is that he would then preface my viewing of the dailies with his critiques, which is difficult. I can't emphasize more how hard it is as a director. Most directors and most of my colleagues, I mean, literally everybody I know who directs, I mean, we are harder on ourselves than anyone on the planet. That's why we do the job. I mean, we're perfectionists. We go in with a plan, we have a vision, we want to do the best work we can possibly do. And we always look at dailies with one, if we get just 75%, 80% of what our original vision is, that's great. But, when you have the studio involved to the point where they're prefacing your viewing of the dailies, then it's not a collaborative situation anymore. You know what I mean? It becomes adversarial at that point. And at the time, as a young filmmaker, you just sort of accept it and you go with it. But, not that every day was terrible, meaning, from the studio's point of view. But there would be, in the first week was difficult because Bill had a certain sense of how the film should be going and how it should look and how he was protecting the franchise, let's put it that way. And he would actually, he would drive to set after his day of work, which took at least an hour and a half for him to get there. And we would then have these sort of long sessions late into the night of my shooting day. So, I would have shot 12 or 13 hours that day. Then I have to spend a good 2 hours in the evenings with Bill listening to his notes and his recommendations. And sometimes it involved other crew members and, everything from hair, makeup, wardrobe, all the way down the line. I mean, he was a bit of a taskmaster, and it was hard to, I remember the tone, I remember the feeling everybody had, but we were tired. We were exhausted. And particularly the poor makeup and hair people. I mean, they had to get up at 3 o'clock, 4 in the morning to get Jason ready for the shoot. And he's keeping them up and giving them these notes about the makeup and the hair of the wolf and stuff, which, again, that's another point of contention where it's like how we decided on the look of the wolf. which I thought it was terrible. I thought the makeup and the hair that Jason had for the wolf was really not good. And I was overridden. They just wanted it. They wanted it to be different than Michael J. Fox's makeup and hair in Teen Wolf. And they went for this look that I thought was just so, I don't know, over the top and unattractive. And again, they're the studio said, look, we're protecting our franchise. We love this. We're going with it,
Jason Bateman is Teen Wolf 2. Todd Howard is a regular guy with a couple of problems, just like his cousin Scott. The good news is he's going to college. The bad news is he's going through a few changes.
I thought we had some pretty talented actors in the supporting roles. And I know that during the first week, we did some improvisation on the script. And the script was a work in progress right up until day one of shooting. As you probably may or may not know, Matt and Jeff brought on a new writer at the time, Tim Crane, who's gone on to become, a major force in television. Really talented guy. So he delivered a script that was, okay, finally we can sort of get, the tone, the humor, the story, the character elements, all the beats were finally working, but it was still a work in progress. So on the set, we were trying to loosen it up a little bit and not just be a plot-driven piece and really bring out the characters. And particularly because, look, you're working with really young, talented actors like Jason Bateman had been working since he was 12. I mean, he's a really good actor and had been working in situation comedies, and he knew how to handle himself off page, off script. And with the other actors that were surrounding him, I tried to surround him with actors that had really good chops in comedy. So we would rehearse a scene, we'd go off page, we'd play around with it because these are kids in college. As you can imagine, the studio reacted in the first week to the extent where they were a little confused because they said wait a second, you're going off page here. What are you doing? And they were freaking out. And it was my attitude was, look, we're trying to, we have the options here. We can always go back to the scripted takes and whatnot. But then they kept pulling the actors out and saying, look, you know what, you have to stick to the page, you have to do this, you can't do this. So unfortunately, when the studio starts talking to your actors and they're telling them, you got to pull it back, you got to be less improvisational on this, and just, that wasn't good. So I felt that kind of took a little bit of responsibility out of it. But the goal here was, it was called Teen Wolf 2. Let's make it at least unexpected, And unfortunately, I think in hindsight, I'm looking back on it, what happened was the studio pulled it back. They wanted more formula. And I think in the long run, that hurt the film.
Thanks for listening to Halloween Treats, presented by the Lookback Machine. Stay tuned for the entire month of October for an episode every single day till November.